a very special episode of Burn the Talking Points today, where we are talking to folks from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and we're going to talk Virginia because we have elections coming up in about 15 days that, depending on how they go, will set the national narrative for the next year and a half as we fight to win back the House and Senate in 2026. So we're going to talk to the executive director of the New Jersey Democratic Party about Mikey Sherrill, that race, where things stand. We're going to talk to the chair of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party because, spoiler alert, there's actually a massive election going on in Pennsylvania right now that people don't really know about, and there's a lot of dark money flowing in. It's all about making sure that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania doesn't go MAGA. One of the most important Supreme Courts, massive swing state, that was a bulwark against some of the Trump administration's or the Trump campaign's worst instincts trying to overturn the election. We need to make sure that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court doesn't go MAGA. So we're going to talk to the Pennsylvania state party chair, and then we're also going to talk a bit about Virginia with Abigail Spanberger and making sure that we know what can we do to support our allies and our friends in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. Because, again, we have about 15 days, not even until the election. We need to use every day possible here in Maryland to make sure that we are supporting our friends out of state. And we also need to make sure that we're supporting both Frederick City and Annapolis because we have local elections as well. But we know in Annapolis and Frederick, that's going to set the narrative for Maryland. We need to win big there. But New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Virginia are going to set the narrative nationwide about what 2026 is going to look like. So if we can win big, maybe some of these Trump-aligned folks might think twice before blindly following him off the cliff. So without further ado, we're going to talk to our friend Saley Avalinda, the New Jersey executive director, and then we're going to head over to Pennsylvania and talk to the chair, and then we're going to end with Virginia. So stay tuned. Joining us from New Jersey, the executive director of the New Jersey Democratic Party. I'm so used to saying Maryland Democratic Party, but the New Jersey Democratic Party is Saley Avalinda, the executive director. So, Saley, thank you so much for joining us. I want to hop right in so folks from Maryland can know where things stand, but also how to get involved to make sure that Mikey Sherrill is the next governor of New Jersey. So first, just from your vantage point, you're on the ground. Where do things stand, 15, 16 days out from Election Day?
Look, I think every poll has shown that Mikey has a lead over our opponent. And, we feel that right on the ground. I've come from an organizing background, so I actually don't even look at polls. For me, polls are things I look at almost as an abstract point, not necessarily a way to guide what I do. So I do feel it on the ground. I do feel the Democratic base really moving. I do feel that sort of like, I'm not going to say excitement because it's more of a fear, really, the fear of the result not working the way we want it to. So I do think she is in the lead. I do think it's a solid lead. But look, it's still too close. I mean, we're New Jersey, right? Like we should have a 20-point lead. This is one of the bluest states in the country. So anything to me that's not double digits makes me really nervous. So I am cautiously optimistic, and I'm working really hard to make sure, and we all are working really hard to make sure that it's a solid win for her and not just like eking it out, right?
So you say you come from an organizing background. What are you hearing from voters on the ground as you travel the state?
So it's interesting because I started organizing after 2016, right? I was a lawyer for 20 years, so I guess my second go around a career. And I feel a little bit of that energy that we had in 18. It's not as I don't know if the word is optimistic. It's not as optimistic, right? I think we're a little bit beaten down as just a culture in general. But I do think people really understand that in order to win, we have to work, right? Like this is not something that you can just phone in. This is not something that you could just show up and vote. That's the minimum you can do. You have to do work. So we do have a lot of enthusiasm with volunteers, a lot of people, out of state, like such as yourself, like wanting to help us. So I feel like that's different than we had in 21, right? We were coming off of, I was ED as well during, Phil Murphy's reelect, and we were coming off of COVID. It was kind of it was a weirder time, right? Like it was a little bit more muted. I feel like it's something like 2018, but different.
Interesting. So the same energy is 2018 the same, people focused on it, but the where they're coming from is probably a different background,
Absolutely.
more of like anger, fear. Like, I mean, No Kings was just this weekend, and it was Trump 2.0 is very different than Trump 1.0. And I think people are seeing the seriousness in a way that maybe 2018, because he was bumbling and had a staff that stepped on rake after rake, is just bringing people at this from different directions. Is that kind of a
Yeah,
okay?
100% that. I think it's the again, I just boil it down to fear. The fear that we could in New Jersey have something like the federal government is dealing with right now. We haven't, I mean, we it's interesting because like New Jersey is blue, but we also had Chris Christie not too long ago.
Mhm.
So it's not so blue that we don't
Very similar to
know.
Maryland. I mean,
But right
we had Larry
now is
Hogan.
not, yeah, and right now is not the time to be like, oh, it's just another Republican. This is not that world. We need, we need a firewall between the state. All of our states need that, and that's what the Democratic governors are, right? Like they're going to be the
Yeah.
wall between what happens from the federal government to the state. So we cannot afford to lose that.
Yeah, when Trump canceled that, was it $18 billion project at the start of the Republican shutdown, and obviously Mike DeShero was apoplectic and fighting to make sure that money was restored, and her opponent said, wasn't it just like not a big deal or something,
He
or
said it
wasn't
wasn't a
worried
New
about it?
Jersey problem, which I don't know. That's I grew up in Hudson County where the tunnel would be, and I've seen what the commute looks like. It's definitely a Jersey problem. There's like, hundreds of thousands of people that try to get into the city every day, in and out.
Yeah.
How do we,
Yeah.
that is part of our economy. That's part of two states' economy, right? Like not just one, but two. And if you count Connecticut, it could even be three. So
Right.
we like the idea that this infrastructure project that is just going to bring hopefully our roads and our travel and all of that into I'm almost like I'm not even optimistic about the 21st century. I just wanted to come into like the late 20th century. Like that is the idea that that's not a New Jersey problem. He just doesn't know how to message that. I mean, it's very clear to me that he knows it's a big deal. He has made his whole entire campaign about being a Trump lackey, and how does he stand up against him now, right? Like it's an obvious, as an operative, I know exactly what it is, but as a regular person, you're like, what? What does that mean?
Yeah.
So,
That's a really good point.
yeah.
So this is obviously going to go to a Maryland audience, although, hey, everyone around the world, feel free to listen to Burn the Talking Points. But for a Maryland audience, why does New Jersey matter for Maryland?
I mean, New Jersey should matter for every state right now. New Jersey and Virginia are the two big elections post this mess that we just did in November. So how New Jersey and Virginia go, that's how the country goes for the next few years. I mean, it's going to impact next year and definitely going to impact the next, presidential election. It's it's a matter of not just the energy that we're trying to show that we have and the momentum, but it's about the branding, it's about the messaging, it's about what the DNC is able to, and all the national committees, because it's not just the DNC. Obviously, we deal with the DGA, the Democratic Governors Association. It's really about like how they're going to do their job, how they're going to work for the next 4 years to undo what is in the federal government right now. And so I think it's important as Democrats to not just vote, because that's the baseline you could do, but be part of it and be involved and be paying attention, because whatever happens in New Jersey and Virginia in 15 days, I can guarantee that it's going to change how next year's elections are. And, next year's elections are incredibly important for the future of this country.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So it's essentially the bellwether of what's going to happen in 26. And if we can win overwhelmingly in New Jersey and Virginia, we're also going to talk about Pennsylvania. That hopefully can send a message to Republicans as well, that like towing the Trump line is not as risk free as they thought it might be.
No, and this candidate specifically, who, by the way, did not toe the Trump line in 21 when he ran against Will Murphy, now became like, super MAGA man, which again, I recognize as an operative is a very deliberate choice he made. And what we need to do is show him it backfires, right? Like that was not the right call. That was the worst call you could have. And that is not what we need in this moment. any state, right? Like any state needs that. And I, Mikey's been really clear. And I think one of her strongest messages is this idea that how could you just say yes to everything from the federal government? Like that's not your job. Your job is to be the representative of the state and to fight for the state. Even if that means sometimes fighting your own party, which, she has done in the past. So it's an interesting message to me, that he is trying to do. And I look at it and just shake my head. I don't know. New Jersey has MAGA, quite a lot of it, but we're still New Jersey, and I don't know how he thinks that's going to play here.
We'll find out, I guess. But for folks in Maryland who are interested in helping and supporting, what can they do to get involved to support New Jersey in the next 15 days?
Prayer, that's one. And then do all the other things that you would normally do. We have buses coming in from the state. We have phone bags through the DNC. We have probably I know we have phone bags through the campaign as well, through our, distributed program. Certainly, again, if you have the time, and this is, obviously the fall is always crazy, to come into New Jersey on a bus or, to do some canvassing. There, I'm sure, organizations that are already doing that in partnership with the campaign and the state party, and just, donate money, whatever it is. I think the key to me is you can't sit back and just say, oh, does not affect me. Even if you're out of state, it will absolutely affect you, because it will affect you next year and it will affect all of us right now. And so I think it's important that we all just recognize that New Jersey and Virginia right now, that's it. Like we've got to make sure that we win. There's no other option to me, and I refuse to entertain another one.
Yeah, I could not agree more. We need to win. So we'll drop, it sounds like phone bank. If you can get to New Jersey, hitting the doors is still essential and critical. And the Mikey Show campaign has plenty of ways to do that. And then if you can't phone bank and you can't make it to New Jersey, although please do one of those two, donate as
You
well.
guys are close enough. I lived in the DC area when I was a baby lawyer. Like I had my bar license from Maryland once. You guys are close enough. You can get a car, take a trip, road trip, weekend. I mean, we're fall foliage up here. Come on and do some canvassing, because we could definitely use the help.
Totally agree. So Marylanders, get in your car, take public transit, do whatever you got to do. Let's get some folks up to New Jersey. And during the week, let's get some folks on the phone bank to make sure that we are helping Mikey Sherrill and Democrats up and down the ballot to win in November. So the executive director of the New Jersey Democratic Party, Staley Avalinda, thank you so much for joining us. Any final things you want to say to our Maryland audience before we sign off?
Just, remember, this could be you. And I was with your governor this weekend, who came up and was, stumping for Mikey. And he of course is incredibly inspirational in the way he speaks to us, and drew a huge crowd. And if it's, he had something to say, which is, if not now, then when, right? Like, what are we waiting for? This is it, because we may not have a democracy in a couple of years. And so we need to make sure our states are shored up to take on whatever's coming from the federal government. So,
Staley, I could
help us, please.
Could not agree more. So Maryland, take the lead of our governor, Governor Moore, and let's see what we can do to help out New Jersey. Thank you so much for joining us, Staley.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Joining us from Pennsylvania is the Pennsylvania Democratic Party Chair, Eugene DePasquale, the other Italian on this call. So thank you for joining.
Absolutely. And in case you're wondering, I'm in the background at a sheet stop. So you know what it's like traveling across the state here. So you got to do these rest stops every now and then.
That might be the most Pennsylvania thing you've ever said and we've ever had on this podcast. So we've talked New Jersey. We're going to talk Virginia. Pennsylvania is a bit of a different thing that's flying under the radar a little bit. Can you tell us what race is on the ballot in Pennsylvania and kind of like why it's different than other states?
So it's easy to understand with New Jersey and Virginia because they have a governor's race, I think lieutenant governor and attorney general also in Virginia, whereas in New Jersey, I think it's just the governors, and there's legislative race. That's easy to get. In Pennsylvania, these are our judicial elections, and in 2015, we won the majority of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, winning all three of the open seats. But in Pennsylvania, every 10 years, we have this retention election, which is a yes-no election. And for the history of our state, these were sort of like just nondescript affairs. Well, a MAGA billionaire has decided to throw in a ton of money in this election. We obviously saw this coming, and we're fighting fire with fire, but they are putting everything they can. Trump has weighed in on this because they know if they defeat and were basically getting no vote, they would basically shut down the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for 2 years in time for the 2026 midterms.
So this is Pennsylvania's voting, yes, we want to keep these judges on the Supreme Court, or no, we want to remove them from the Supreme Court. Is that right?
That's correct.
And this is a Supreme Court, from my understanding, that is a well-functioning Supreme Court that has been a bulwark against, anti-democratic principles, and that the Trump administration has tried to throw some crazy lawsuits that they've rejected because they're insane.
No question. You start off with just they've stood up for reproductive freedom. They have stood up for the environment. They have stood up for fair education funding. That's sort of the Pennsylvania issue. The broader national issues is they threw out a gerrymandered map, said it was unconstitutional, thus forced a fair map, which, by the way, the Republicans have a slight majority in our state right now under the congressional map. Prior to this past election, we had a slight majority. Why? Because it's a fair map. Both sides have a chance. It should be up to the voters, not up to the politicians to pick their voters. This Supreme Court made sure that happened. So that's number one. Number two, in 2020 and 2024, they stood up to make sure that every single legal vote was counted. And that's something that Donald Trump simply didn't like in 2020, even though he won the state by the exact same process they set out in 2024.
Yeah, Donald Trump's not a huge fan of the courts in general. And so making sure that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court continues to have justices that care about the Constitution is essential. So as party chair, you obviously travel the state quite a bit. Like, where do you see things standing in this race now? And like, what are you hearing from voters on the ground?
Yeah, politically, I'd rather be us than them. I think we've got a lead. It's not, a 90-10. I mean, in previous elections, this was sort of a 70-30 affair. But when you've got somebody worth $78 billion and the owner of TikTok throwing unlimited money at this, that's going to have an impact and at least consolidate their base. So they've probably done a pretty good job of consolidating their base, but there's no evidence that they're peeling off Democrats or independents yet. Obviously, we've got a couple more weeks of this thing, so we got to keep our foot on the gas. So I'd rather be us than them. We've got a lead, but it is no landslide by any stretch of the imagination. Here's the one thing that is just interesting. They must, because look, they did polling too. What they are doing with their mail campaign is they're mailing Democrats say yes to term limits, vote no. Say yes to defend democracy, vote no. They're clearly trying to trick Democrats into voting no. And so sometimes, because look, again, it's not a governor's race, it's not a U.S. Senate race where people know the names, and there is no opponent. So people have been, average voters are getting this, and they're just confused. Well, I like democracy, but what vote no on what? And when we actually text those voters or phone bank them, or they see our ads, we pull them back immediately, because it's not like some scandal or something where they're actually convincing Democrats that these are bad justices. They're just getting confused on it. Maybe they're trying to appeal to Democrats who are upset at the U.S. Supreme Court, so they're trying to confuse them and try to trick them. So the most important thing we find is not only for our broad communication where the governor's on air with a great ad, and we've got some other digital ads that I think are very good, but when we actually have actual Democrats call these voters and say, hey, look, that's a right-wing MAGA billionaire trying to trick you. Here's why you should vote yes. We almost always pull those voters back.
Are you actually finding you have to go in behind these mailers and say, hey, that was a deceptive mailer?
Yeah. Wow. I'm not going to say it's I want to be clear. It's not every voter. There's a lot of people that, say, but we cannot afford to lose 15 to 20% of Democrats in this election. And you could just tell their strategy is, and it's bright as day, is that they know they're not going to win Democrats, but their goal is to get 15 to 20% of them, which basically, if they do that, would make this a borderline dead tie.
Which I think kind of reinforces why having Marylanders, call, text, and, go to Pennsylvania will be really important, because it sounds like this mega billionaire who we all know that he's put quite a bit of money into a lot of elections and is very into Donald Trump, is trying to muddy the waters and actually just confuse people. So you're kind of running parallel campaigns. You need a voter education campaign. You need a turnout campaign. Like it's a lot for the Democratic Party of Pennsylvania to have to shoulder. And so making sure you have support from outside. So what can Marylanders do to support your efforts?
Yeah, so I want to. One good thing about this election is it's not a presidential turnout. So we know who's voting. We know who's voting by mail. And look, you can obviously tweak it at the margins, but we generally know who votes these off year elections. So what Marylanders can do to help us is supplement our volunteer base, in each of our counties, which we're doing a texting program and a calling program. We're starting with chasing vote by mail, because in Pennsylvania, there's no early vote in person. The early vote is, in a sense, vote by mail, and then we shift to election day. So our focus right now is getting all of our mail ballots in, and then we're going to shift to the people that we believe are going to vote in person.
So that sounds like a super tangible thing that Marylanders can do, which we will put in the show notes some links. But you can literally do ballot chase of vote by mail for Democrats to get them to submit their ballot so the Pennsylvania Democratic Party can focus on the rest of the turnout for election day. And I will say we have some partnerships in Lancaster County. So our folks in Cecil, Hartford, northern Baltimore County, drive over the border. We have a ton of options that they're organizing through Lancaster. Like, we can do calls.
And we can give you a list to do it from your home. We can give we can give you a list to do it at home. And we also have Turn PA Blue and the state party are organizing text and phone banks as well.
All right, we'll link all those in the show notes as well. So do it from home. If you want to get in the car, get in the car. Let's make it all happen.
And along the border, by the way, just to let you know, on the border, you have York County, Lancaster County, that are literally right across the border. That if you're in Western Maryland, you can get into Bedford. I think it's Somerset, along the Pennsylvania border as well. So we have plenty of options if you want to make the drive. But if you don't want to make the drive, you can do this from your home.
That's awesome. Well, we will, again, make sure everything's linked in the show notes. Anything that you want to share with the listening audience before we sign off, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, there is. Look, I love Maryland. I mean, my son went to grad school at Georgetown, so we go to a lot of O's games. Love Maryland, love Baltimore, whole 9 yards. Alpha Brooks is great. You guys are doing great there. Love Wes Moore. But this is just a reality. Maryland will go Democratic in 2028. If we don't win Maryland at the presidential level, we're something dramatically bad has happened. If we do not have this functioning Supreme Court in place, Pennsylvania is imperiled for a 2020. We have to get Pennsylvania back to blue to win the White House. So this has broader implications than just these 3 Supreme Court justices.
That is an incredibly good point. So, folks, let's make sure we do what we can to call, text, show up in person, whatever we can do to help Pennsylvania. We need to do it. Mr. Chair, thank you for joining Burn the Talking Points today.
No, I'm really honored that you had me, and thank you for being part of the fight.
Thank you. So we talked to New Jersey. We've talked to Pennsylvania. Let's talk Virginia. Abigail Spanberger is running for governor of Virginia, and Virginia is unique in a lot of ways. One, their governor cannot run for re-election. They are only allowed to serve 1 4-year term. And so it's an open seat. We have a great chance of taking it back from Republicans. But 2, Virginia has off-year elections the year after a presidential. So 2017, 2021, 2025. What we need to do is make sure that we win in Virginia, and ideally we can win big to set the tone for the coming midterms and showing that Democrats are fired up, Democrats show up to vote, and Democrats are ready to make sure that we both win the governor mansion in New Jersey, in Virginia, hold the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, but are also ready to flip the House and take back the Senate. And now let me give you just some updates from Virginia and kind of where things stand with Abigail Spanberger. One, there's been a lot of polls out recently. She's either up just a little bit or up a lot. But here's the thing. No one knows, and the only poll that matters is election day. So we need to make sure that we are showing up everywhere, and we are fighting for every voter. We also know that Abigail Spanberger is running a campaign that is focused on improving Virginia's standard of living, focused on affordability, and focused on those kitchen table issues that we know are driving people to the polls right now, where her opponent, who is Glenn Youngkin's current lieutenant governor, is running a race focused on culture issues and trying to divide Virginians. Now, that strategy may have worked in the presidential. We don't know. We're going to see what happens in Virginia. But my money's on someone who's focused on the affordability crisis that is plaguing both America and Virginia families under the Republican leadership. And so what we need to do is show up both in person when we can, but also get on the phones, get texting we all have family in Virginia. We have friends in Virginia. We need to make sure that they show up to vote. Now, we have a lot of really great opportunities in Virginia as a state that we're used to sending folks to. We are used to having people volunteer there. So, one, County Executive Fitzwater is actually bringing a bus down to Virginia on November 1st. You can sign up on the Mobilize, which we'll drop in the show notes. But then the Spamberger campaign and the Virginia Democratic Party have so many different ways for you to volunteer through phone banks, through text banks, in person, whatever it might be. And if you can't do any of those, just like in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, you can donate. So we're going to drop a lot of different links for New Jersey, for Pennsylvania, and for Virginia in the show notes here. Make sure that you pick one and volunteer as many times as you can. But Virginia is either razor thin, but the good part is we can also run away with this. And if we run away with Virginia and we really win, that's going to set the tone for 2026 and we can make it happen. So imagine an Abigail Spamberger victory on election night, a Mikey Sherrill victory on election night, and retaining the Supreme Court on election night. That's going to feel really good. Thank you to Sally Evelinda, the executive director of the New Jersey Democratic Party, to Chair Eugene DePasquale, the chair of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party. And thank you to all you for tuning in. Things are really close. As you heard in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, what I told you about in Virginia, it's a razor's edge in a lot of these races. But here's the thing. It can be overwhelming victories if we do what we need to do. So again, check the show notes. Find out where you can volunteer. You can volunteer during the weekday. You can volunteer on the weekend. Whatever you can do, we have 15 days to win and set the tone for 2026. So again, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Annapolis, Frederick City, all really important elections. Let's make sure we're doing everything we can to win in November.